Welcome to the first of a multi-part series about Craig Fouts, Vietnam veteran. In this episode, we dive into an introduction of who Craig Fouts is and his experience. See episode 2 for an in-depth version. Listen as we get to know Craig and his amazing story. This episode takes place at the Vietnam Veteran Memorial located in Papillion, Nebraska, at the foot of the Huey helicopter tail number 532. Craig was the crew chief on board and flew in countless missions. Let's jump right in.
When I was just a child, my dad had a chicken ranch. So I grew up with the little yellow fluffy chickens, but we didn't stay there long before we moved to Hawthorne, California, Lawndale. And then we moved to California in the early 50s. And my dad was... Actually, we moved to El Monte first because my dad worked for the post office, and then he moved the family down to Lawndale, and he went to work for the Sky Store because in the service he was an aircraft mechanic. He was in World War II, and he first joined the Army Air Force to be an aircraft mechanic. He was working on P-38s. But then they sent him to the Army directly and sent him as an infantryman into the Philippines and to Okinawa. And he used to tell us stories, and I used to be in awe with some of this. I used to think, gee, I'd like to have gone through that if I knew I wasn't going to get hurt, to know what it was like to see what he went through. But he was in a counterattack on the Kakazoo Ridge where he lost a lot of men and they had to replace him. And then they went off to Hacksaw Ridge. It was Sawtooth Ridge.
Yes.
And in the movie Hacksaw Ridge, there's a little clip where there's a lot of the wounded men being hauled in a truck. And there's the dead body and the wounded, and geez, who are those people? He said, that's what's left of the 96th. We're replacing them. And that was Doss's outfit. He won the Medal of Honor. So he went to those two, and he got wounded at the end, close to the end of the war. Somebody in front of him hit a mine, a heavy bomb, and threw about 30 guys in the air and took a chunk out of his arm. And that was that with him. Well, I was so interested in it when I was small that you kept having to pry it out of him. I want to know. And he told us about the different things, but he didn't really elaborate on them. I received letters that he wrote home to my mother, and in one counterattack he drew a map, and it showed how they overran his tomb that he was caught up in, trying to make it to a gully behind the tomb. And it showed how many people were hurt. And I was after high school. I went into junior college, El Camino Junior College, studying law. And then I got my draft notice. And since my dad was in the service, we started talking about what I should do. He just said, stay out of the infantry, even if you have to extend an extra year, and take maybe aircraft maintenance to back you up or whatever. I said, okay, I'll go see a recruiter, and wanted to become a pilot. So my first choice was pilot with aircraft maintenance to back me up. So I joined for 3 years. So then I went to basic training and was told I could apply after basic training. And they didn't let me. They sent me straight to AIT, where I was studying aircraft mechanics. And then they said I could apply after AIT. Okay, I'll go through that. Then I caught pneumonia in AIT, so it delayed me. I had to go through that again. By the time I got through with AIT, I finally was assigned my flight school. But it was 6 months away before I could go to it. So I said, I've had enough of the Army already. I think just go for the 3 years and get out. So I finished the AIT and came home and then went straight to Nam. I was sent to the 1st Air Cav Division, and then they sent me up north to the Camp Evans up by the DMZ. When I first heard, when I was sitting there waiting for our assignment, I kind of wanted that yellow patch, but I didn't want to go up north by the DMZ because I heard they were having trouble up there in Ashaw Valley. Well, that's where they sent me. So I go, uh-oh. So going up to Ashaw Valley, the first thing I thought about, looking out the window, I think it was a Chinook that we took to Camp Evans. And we're sitting in there on the sides of the helicopter, and I'm looking out, and I'm looking at the side of the ship. It's got all these patches on it where there's rounds came in, they patched them. Uh-oh, what are we in for? And I look down at all these beautiful ponds. There's so many beautiful ponds, about the same size, with water. I'm thinking, man, there's a lot of those ponds. Turns out they were bomb craters that were filled with. Joined in 19, so I'd have been 20 when I got to Vietnam. Well, flew in on a Freedom Bird, they called them. Yeah, it was a Braniff, I think it was a Braniff Airlines. And when we landed at the airport, first sight was these gray buses coming to pick us all up, to take us to the processing. And we unloaded from the buses, and they herded us into the processing center like a bunch of cattle. So you hear these guys going, moo, moo, cattle. So that's where the processing area was, and we were waiting outside, sitting on our duffel bags, and that's where you saw that they were going to send you to the air cav. And it was okay. This is the first day of the year-long tour. So we start counting down from here. And I said, this is all going to be a dream. It'll be over with in a year, and I'll be back. So I put myself in the mind, none of this is real. It's just put up with it for a year. But there was nothing going on. And the first formation I was in, I noticed we were all lined up, and I noticed there were live rounds out in front of us. And the sergeant out in front of us, I said, hey, there's rounds out there, loose rounds. He said, you'll get used to that. Yeah, so I'm a little embarrassed about it. Okay, we'll get used to that. And then there we were put into barracks and pulled KP. And even after we got to Camp Evans, a lot of KP, a lot of guard duty, stuff like that. Thinking, okay, this is going to be safer than I thought. Until they sent us to Quan Loy, because nothing was happening. It was getting close to the monsoon. So they decided to send us down south where we could be used more. And we were headed towards Quan Loy. And that was kind of a bad word. We heard that was Rocket Alley and incoming every day. And we heard that when we arrived there, to be very alert and be ready for anything. And that was my first few flights as a door gunner. The first flight as a door gunner, I had the pilot yelling at me because I didn't feel any danger. And I was there was a funeral going on down below that must have been a village chief or something, because there were so many people down there. And it felt very primitive, like you were flying in a time machine. And the first time I took fire was probably a month and a half after I got there. And the first experience was that I was sitting behind the gun, and the loud pops were louder than I was ever expecting. So I automatically jumped out of my seat and left one hand on the trigger and realized I had to get busy. So got busy, fired about 8 rounds off and the gun jammed. I'm out there prying it loose with a screwdriver, but by the time I got it fixed, we were out of the area. But that was the first experience. It was just like, whoa. The worst day and the closest call, where I was really, it wasn't even in the air, it was on the ground. And I was sleeping, and I was having a dream that we were having incoming mortar rounds. But they kept getting louder and louder and walking in. So I finally woke up, found out it wasn't a dream at all, it was real. And all these mortars are coming in closer and closer and closer. Yeah. And then hit the floor. Before, a few days before, we had built sandbags up around our hooch. And that came in handy, because the first mortars kept coming in, rockets kept coming in, and they didn't stop. They just kept coming in. And they were hitting closer and closer. Shrapnel was coming through the walls. Shrapnel was hitting on the roof. You could look up and see the sky was red through the holes in the roof. So we're hitting the ground, rolling over, and we knew we had to get to a bunker really quick. So I was living with a couple of friends in there in that hooch. One of them was Ruben Alejandro, and Malsby was another one, but he was on guard duty evidently that night. So I'm running out the door, round hits and knocks down our showers. A flare drops into the doorway, and I'm instinctively thought, okay, now I got to run to the other side, get out the window. So, and Alejandro was right behind me. We tried to crawl out the window that was over by my area. When we did that, I'm getting out of the window, and this rocket comes by about from here to where you are, and it shot up. It was wiggling like this, and then it shot up, and then it went back down and exploded. Then another round exploded over by where that wall is over there and hit a tree. I run back in. I said, okay, this is it. We got our steel pot on, our flak jacket, and I grabbed my duffel bag, threw the cot over us, and got behind that and just waited. And I knew that was it. And then, bam, the loudest explosion ever. And the walls started coming in, the ceiling started burying us underneath all the rubble. And I'm yelling, Alejandro, you okay? He didn't answer me. I said, Alejandro. He said, yeah. He said, you okay? He said, I think so. I said, yeah, I think so. I think I am too. Hey, I can move my hand. Hey, I can dig out here. So I dug out, and then it helped Alejandro out, and it quieted down. Everything was quiet, but there was nobody around. Total darkness, total quiet. And we saw a guy named, we called him Whiskey. He was caught in between, one of the windows had a bar, like a jail cell, and he was trapped beneath that, and he was bleeding arterially from the arm. And as soon as we started to help him out, there was more income and started coming in. So our automatic reaction was to, oh, let's get to the bunker. So we flinched. Hey, we didn't get him out yet. We went back in to get him out. So we got him out, and then we started, and then finally the incomings quit, and we started digging everybody out.
Thanks for tuning in to The Connection. It's been a fantastic journey exploring stories, insights, and inspirations that bridge our lives. Remember, every connection has the power to transform. Please subscribe, rate, and review. Your feedback keeps us going. In this connected world, let's make meaningful connections that enrich lives. Now, signing off until next time. The Connection. Keep connecting and let's go.